Once again, welcome to our webinar. This webinar is strategies for safe events. Today we're going to be covering a bunch of different topics. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you all can kind of get an idea of what we're going to do. Okay, full screen. Thank you, technology. Awesome. All right, now just trying to find that side-by-side view so I can see. All right, so today we are talking about strategies for safe events, where I'm Gabby Albano. I'm the events assistant over at Venture Portland. And then we have Khalees Rucker, who is a PBOT employee, and she specifically is here to talk about not only Portland in the streets, but event permits and healthy business permits. I don't know if Khalees, you can give us a wave or something in the woohoo. And she'll take over after I introduce some of what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to be talking about we're going to answer some questions surrounding business and events outdoors. And we're going to talk about strategizing and on how to manage risk when you're indoors. This is a topic that is going to be touching on COVID-19. We understand that we've been in this pandemic together for many years now, so a lot of us have ample knowledge and experience with this subject. My approach to the indoor safety techniques is going to be to help strategize how to keep risk low, rather than reiterating a bunch of information that you may already know. Khalees, on the other hand, will be talking about the healthy business permits and the latest updates with PBOT, upcoming deadlines, how to make the most of your outdoor spaces. Additionally, we'll talk about some community event permits and what they cover, how much they cost, and the area for getting your application approved. Probably the steps for getting your application approved. If you weren't here for our webinar with PBOT last month, we had Allison from PBOT who was explaining how to do moving events. This is also my cat, Freddie. If you can hear him, that is unfortunate because we share a small apartment together. So I will try to encourage him to not interrupt my important webinar. So what I'll be talking about after PBOT is indoor risk management, and specifically transmission hotspots, prevention plans, and how to respond when there has been an exposure. These are important things that business owners and event planners can do to prevent COVID spread and also respond responsibly. And then some resources, so some programs that are still available to you and organizations that you could partner with, and other helpful options. I wish my cat could do the webinar for me. So I wanted to actually kick things off with a question. We know that COVID is easier to spread when indoors. My question to you all, and utilize the chat if you want to take a guess, how many times higher is the rate of transmission indoors compared to outdoors? Give everybody a second to think about this. Maybe even take a guess. We got a couple chats. 10 times. Yep, 10 times. Anybody else want to throw out a number before I reveal the answer? Okay, 50. Yeah. Okay, it's shooting for the high end. So the answer, 20 times. Okay, 20 times. I like how we are all thinking big, because 5 studies in their analysis determined that less than 10% of all reported COVID infections have occurred outdoors, and that the odds of indoor transmission were 18.7 times higher in comparison to outdoor transmission. So that number really reveals how the outdoors is such a benefit for lowering risk. And that's what this point is. So, well, um, with Zoom fatigue and the mask mandate being lifted, being outdoors is one of the best tools we have for managing COVID risks. So we wanted to present this webinar as a chance to talk about the rules for conducting business outdoors and how much does it actually cost to use the parking lot or the sidewalk for an event. So without further ado, thank you for letting me introduce our guest today, Khalees Rucker, and she's going to start her presentation and start chatting about the various permits and all the and answer any questions you might have. So I'm going to stop my screen and I'm going to invite Khalees to take over. Hello.
Hey, just as a heads up, I have never done a presentation before, so bear with me. I'll do my best. My name is Khalees Rucker. I am with PBOT, she, her pronouns. I've been doing community use permitting for 14 years. I started as a block party intern 18 years ago, which is old enough to vote or go to the Army. So it's pretty wild. I'm going to be first talking about healthy business permits. So let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen.
Yes, thank you for being with us on your very first presentation. We are honored.
All right, let's see.
Nice.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's coming up right now. Perfect.
Fantastic. So the first thing I want to talk about is healthy business permit updates. There we go. Just as kind of some background, the healthy business permit was created in 2020 as a COVID response for public health. We knew that people were safer, which I did not know those numbers. The 18.7% was pretty fascinating, but it makes a lot of sense. So we were responding to restaurants being reduced capacity or no capacity and allowing them to do business safer out in the right of way. So we created this program really fast. Once we kind of moved from the sort of emergency response, we moved into economic stabilization. So we wanted to keep the permits going and keep them free. So we continued to waive the permit fee, done that for 2 years. We also limited design review. We allowed temporary materials, which has been good. It got a bunch of people out there, which is great. Like everybody's been using the space in different ways. It has led to a little bit of issues, but we'll talk about that later. But because of like these low bar for entry, we've been able to issue over 1,000 permits, which is pretty amazing. And that's to 700 individual businesses. That's a huge reach. We've heard there's a survey that came out, I think last year, and 94% of people surveyed like loved the program. And this is a pretty large sample size. So that's been really, really boosting to hear. These permits include sidewalk use. So you probably remember sidewalk cafes from yesteryear. Those are kind of rolled over into healthy business. Parking use and also street use. There have been a few street plazas. We've done a lot of permit cycles, mainly because we, like everyone, thought that COVID was going to be over before it was. So we've done 4 permit cycles, which has been really challenging, and 1 current permit extension. So the permits that are active right now were valid until June 30th, but now we are extending them automatically through August 31st to give us some opportunities to do more program development. This is our proposed timeline. This is how we move from this temporary program into a more permanent program. There's a lot that we're considering, a lot that we're working through. And because we created this program like on the fly, there's just a lot of structural work that we need to do. Currently, we are in this kind of economic analysis and permit holder surveys. If you know of businesses that hold permits, they will be sent out a survey probably the end of this month, just to kind of see, was there an impact? How much did they spend on the installation? A whole bunch of questions. We're very curious to see how this program worked for everybody. We're also working on program development currently. So this is like long-term. We're looking at like fee schedule. We also requested American Rescue Plan funding from council. So we'll find out about that in May, whether we get that. That will also help subsidize fees for the upcoming cycle, which starts September 1st. So there will be fees. Hopefully they're subsidized with the ARP funding. We're also updating design standards. Our current conditions only allow for tents, but I'm sure that you have walked the streets and have seen that that is not what's out there. So we're trying to figure out how can we help bring people into compliance. Are we gonna, should we do new, we're trying to figure out how to work this out for everybody so it's not a huge lift and to allow for less temporary structures in the public right of way. We also want to create a stakeholder group. So, reach out to me if you're interested in being a part of that. We want to hear from business districts, from businesses, internal partners, all that sort of thing. So that's all happening. It's all happening right now. And we're going to work through all of that through December 2023, because right now what's happening is the new permits with fees will come out September 1st. Everybody will receive some information probably in July or June after we hear from council. It'll have revised interim standards for equipment, which allows for platforms and that sort of thing, permit fees. And we're also going to focus on education and compliance. We're going to work on pedestrian safety, there's supposed to be 6 feet of safe pedestrian passageway on sidewalks, and that's not happening in a lot of spaces. We need to work through that. And that's all, those permits will be valid through December 2023. I talked a lot about this, just the last slide, but this is kind of what we're looking at right now for what this future program looks like. Fees, like how much can we subsidize? How much are people able, how much is the right of way worth? We're also looking at location, utility access, fire access, pedestrian access, sight lines. So some things that have been built are fully enclosed, which doesn't allow for a decent sight line from the sidewalk out to the street. And then also really considering the competing needs for the parking spaces, like what is appropriate, like how many should we have out there? We're also looking at what goes in the space. So we've got a new accessibility guide that's coming out hopefully next week. It's really fantastic. I'll send everybody the link when we get it. I think it's going to be really great. We're also thinking about hardened traffic barriers, like what do the structures look like, what kind of structures are allowed, design and material requirements, and then also really working with our partners like the fire marshal's office to see what do they need in order to have the space be accessible to them. These are the folks that we're working with, our regulatory partners, Portland Fire and Rescue, BES, because we want to keep that the storm sewer stuff going, OLCC, Multnomah County Health, and noise control. So that's the Healthy Business Updates. That's my information there. I can also share it out. We also have a feedback form that I can also link to at some point. Let me see how to stop sharing and then share my new. All right.
Yes, thank you. And then we're gonna keep going with Khalees's information and then have a question break. So if you do have any healthy business permit questions, please hang on to them. We're just gonna go into the other permitting conversation first. Awesome.
And I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
Yeah, it's good stuff though. Thank you.
Let me know. Oops, sorry. All right, can we see it? Great. So I work for a group in PBOT called Portland in the Streets. We do community use permitting. We were created, I think like 4 or 5 years ago after there was a livable street strategy that was created that envisioned more active, vibrant spaces for communities. The thing to note about our programs is that it's all community driven. It's not PBOT priorities. It's not any of that. It is the community coming to us with an idea for their space, for their right of way, and telling us what they'd like to do with it. So that's unique about us. We have put a lot of our programs on hold because we've been fully responding to the pandemic through the healthy business permits. However, we're bringing a few of our programs online in 2022. So we've got healthy businesses, healthy blocks, which is kind of the COVID response to block parties. community events, street paintings, art encroachments, and then our stewardship agreements. Healthy business permit I talked to you about earlier. This is kind of more like how long it takes to get it. It's free through August 31st, and then a fee will be implemented. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks of processing. Just depends on your location and the information that you have, but that's all of our links right there. And then we have our healthy blocks permits. Like I said, it's kind of our COVID response to block parties. It allows neighbors to create more space to either gather or play or ride their bikes. It's a really, I love our healthy blocks. The cool thing about the healthy blocks permit program is that we allow for household objects now. So we have specific ones you can use to close your street. So we're making it less cost prohibitive for the traffic control devices. And it really floats my boat, makes me really excited. Healthy blocks are completely free. It takes, we're saying 8 to 10 business days. It used to be we used to be able to turn around really quickly. Because of our staff capacity, we need a little bit more time. But this is online, so get your neighbors together and have fun. The next one that I'm going to spend probably a little bit more time on is the community event permits. These are one-time events or like farmers markets. I think we've had like some flea markets happen on the streets, so they can be recurring, but it's not like a permanent street closure. The events must be open to the public. Currently, we have no fees. So right now, the fees have been waived through June 30th, 2022. So they are waived right now. After July 1st, so this is our fiscal year, we will be charging a $100 application fee. All other permit fees will be waived still, except for ticketed events. Ticketed events are their own beast. They still have to be, the tickets all have to be available to the public. So it can't be a private event. It needs to be available to the public. But those we will be charging a fee for, and I can give you that fee schedule at the end. I was surprised because I thought that community events were going to come back at maybe like 50% this year because the events community has been pretty decimated by COVID, but we are at like 175%. It is wild. Because of that and because of healthy businesses, we're requiring 15 days minimum to get your stuff in. So apply early. Yen, who is the community event coordinator, is phenomenal to work with. He is so kind and thorough. So apply, call him, talk to him, but definitely get your stuff in early. That's a big deal. We're also bringing back notifications. So you will need to get signatures or notify people with flyers on the block. Again, trying to think of what else is new and exciting. PBOT is starting some public plazas that you can use for your community events. They haven't been chosen yet. I think the RFP is out now. It's a different group, but there's also grants available, which it's on the last slide. So if you're holding a community event, you can apply for a grant, which is exciting. I'm trying to think of anything else. Well, ask me questions about community events because when we get to the end of this. Next thing we have the street painting permits. These are available to everybody. We were painting healthy business permit sites last year. So you see some parking. There's a bunch of street plazas that have paintings on them. Neighborhoods paint them. They're really cool. There's also some curb extensions that you probably see around Portland. I love street paintings. I think they help give a really nice identity to a neighborhood or a district. They take 3 to 4 weeks. And really we're encouraging you to work with your community on these. So we try to make them as community building as possible. So that's them. Our art encroachment permits this is a longer term project. If you want to do something like this, start talking to us right away. It takes 3 or more months to go through it. There's a lot of engineering review that needs to happen, but we've done some really cool things out in the right of way. People have done some really cool things. We've permitted them. So I don't know much about these ones, so if you have questions, I can get you in touch with the folks who are working on them, but they're pretty cool. Sorry. We also have our right-of-way stewardship program, which are for the green right-of-way spaces that you see out there. A lot of medians have like grassy spaces. This is for folks to just like adopt a space, take care of it, you know, throw in some bulbs, some plantings like that, mow it. It's pretty fun. People have some really cute things. So that's another one of our programs. These are the available support we have. We always want to help anybody with any application. We will walk you through it. We will fill it out for you. We will do any of it. Our big thing is we want to make this process as easy as possible for you. It's my number one thing. We have notification templates that I can send out, and then we'll also create traffic control plans for everything. So you don't need to worry about creating that from scratch. That's the whole thing. We will need site plans, but we can work with you on that. These are some partnership and funding opportunities. Here is the events and activation grant link. So they're supporting events in public spaces, and they're accepting applications now. So definitely apply. There's also a street plaza expression of interest. So they're hoping to get, I don't know how many, maybe 4 to 10 public street plazas going. So if you want to be a partner, definitely fill out one of these forms for an expression of interest. They'll be closed permanently and they'll be activated regularly. So it's going to be pretty exciting. And then we have the Black Portland Matters Art and Placemaking Initiative. So we've done some really cool things. There's been some wraps, art wraps on utility boxes, some murals. There's a lot of really cool stuff, some cool stuff happening with it there. That's it. That's what I have. So I'd love to answer any questions you have.
Yes, thank you, Khalees. I definitely appreciate you covering all of the permits, because representatives from certain business districts are here, and it's helpful for disseminating information. So really encouraging you to take this information to your other businesses. But does anybody at this point have any questions, have any specific events that they want to ask a PBOT representative about while we have Khalees? I'm going to give the floor to the chat. Okay. Awesome. Sarah says, I have a million questions, which is fair. And let me look at the chat exactly. So, oh, sorry, everyone in the meeting, where is all the chat? I just saw it. For some reason, my chat is not updating with Sarah's question. Sarah, do you mind just asking Khalees out loud?
Sure. I just wanted to know if we can email you with a list of questions rather than taking up a lot of time here.
Sure. Yeah, I will. I'll put my email in the chat. Right.
Thank you so much.
There we go. Great. And then Judy, thank you for raising your hand. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, Khalees, thank you so much. I have a question about, can you just explain a little bit more about the difference between a block party permit versus a community event permit? Because we are thinking about doing a block party in June that will encompass a vaccine clinic, but also getting local businesses in the Hollywood area involved. So I'm not sure which permit would be better for us to apply.
That is a fantastic question, and is literally the part that confuses people the most. So thank you for asking that. Block parties are meant for residents, not businesses, and it's for only the folks who are on a specific residential block. So for example, I live on 12th Street or 12th Avenue, only be for the people between this block and this block. Yeah, all the neighbors can come, but that's really what the intention is. It's not drawing people from the greater community, and there's no insurance required. It's just, we try to keep it a low bar. For community events, it's anything kind of bigger than that. So whether an organization hosts it or a business hosts it, your intended draw is the larger community. There are businesses involved. There might be like a vaccine clinic or, health type stuff. That would be a community event. So anything that's not like neighbor or resident kind of led would be a community event.
Great, thank you so much.
Does anybody else have a question? Well, that means you did a great job, Khalees. You answered all the pertinent information. This is very helpful. Permitting is a conversation for event planners and business owners that comes up again and again, you know, with parks permits and the PBOT moving events versus stationary events. So I really appreciate you being willing to just field those 100 questions that we might have, and then partnering with us on future events. All right, so now that we've talked about all these amazing opportunities that you can do outdoors, right? Trying to keep things outdoors for as long as possible. I'm gonna switch gears and we're gonna go talk about what happens when you can't do business outdoors. You can't do an event outdoors. So let me make sure that great. Sorry, I saw a couple notifications in the chat that I just had to confirm that I've addressed, but pivoting to the indoor conversation. So we understand that the risk of transmission is so much higher indoors. And the good news is that cases are lower and the skies are looking blue. People are feeling excited that that their vaccines are working, or people we're finally getting to the point where our hospitals aren't overwhelmed. The bad news is that things do change, and folks are getting a little bit more confident, and so they perhaps are abandoning their rain gear. You know, with the blue skies, it's not fun to carry around the umbrella just in case it rains. So what do we do as people have been changing, and how can we as event planners or business owners kind of keep things just in case, so that we don't find ourselves feeling unprepared for an outbreak or just a higher risk of COVID transmission appearing again? So these are going to be 3 strategies that perhaps you have not heard about that can, again, change your approach to COVID and how you're going to change the level of risk within the indoor space. The very first thing is talking about transmission hotspots. So like weak points in a building's infrastructure, there may be specific points in your space that have a much higher risk of transmission. We understand that, you know, building plans make for a strong infrastructure, but there's always areas where use and continued traffic can cause your best plans to just get worn down with time. And the same thing can be applied with COVID. We know that certain locations are going to be the riskiest spots. Dining areas, of course, are going to have a ton of areas that need to be wiped down consistently. But if you think about a bathroom, that's where people are going to be. If you do require a mask, bathrooms are going to be an area where people remove the masks to check their face. Hallways and confined areas without any windows are big, and then basements, because not a lot of basements are well ventilated. So the question is where in the building would it be the riskiest place for someone to sneeze? And if you start to think in that realm, you're able to make a plan for how are you going to address that hotspot. Is that going to be the place where you sanitize 3 times as much than if you have a busy storefront to run? Maybe you can't wipe down all the surfaces all the time, but you can make an effort to hit those transmission hotspots again to lower the risk. Similarly, items can be extremely risky as well. We know that COVID doesn't linger on surfaces as long as it does in the air, but that said, there are so many things that we share within the event sphere or the business sphere that could cause transmission. So microphones, walkie-talkies, reusable cups and utensils without a thorough sanitizing process. Any sort of tester products. I'm not quite certain people even use tester products anymore after the pandemic, but even cell phones, if we think about what is close to our face and our mouth, and how are we thinking about sanitizing that before we hand it off to the next person. This is preparation work that can allow a business owner to like focus in on certain areas, especially if they have a lot to run and a lot of things to do during the day. Consistent efforts with the transmission hotspots will lower the risk. Similarly, prevention plans are, again, the idea that once you identify your hotspot, it's easier to create specific systems and procedures on how you're going to manage the risk. We know that good ventilation and sanitization are going to be tools that help keep the space relatively COVID-free. I put a picture of somebody in a mask because that is still a proven way that you can prevent COVID from being as transmittable. So if you choose to use masks in your store or at your indoor event, that can be one of the best ways to reduce that risk. But with the mask mandate being lifted, it's harder to draw that line. And so this prevention plan is, again, going to be geared more to how to handle your indoor space, even if there aren't masks at your event. These specific strategies are going to be better than just a general approach. I think that even though we've been in the pandemic for so long, sometimes we all get the feeling that we all know that hand washing, and we know that wiping down surfaces are good, but again, without a specific procedure, you just are assuming that your volunteers or your employees are all operating with the same page or same book, and that's not always the case. So while it's good to provide hand sanitizer in a dining room, it's also really important to wipe down the surfaces, because unfortunately, we can't just assume that all patrons at a restaurant are going to wipe down their area after their use. Similarly, I have the please wash your hands sign, because again, it's not that people don't wash their hands, it's just these encouraging reminders and these strategies for helping people get visuals to help them remember in their many to-dos, like how to prevent COVID transmission. So consider adding a cute little part of your decor, be a please wash your hands sign, and that can be good for your event reputation as well, that this is still something that you're considering and you're addressing. It just hasn't floated away. So the other prevention plan is to address the fact that COVID outbreaks are costly. Closures, staffing shortages, sick leave, and testing can all be extremely pricey. So a prevention plan is going to be a fiscal incentive to try to limit how many outbreaks happen. It does mean sometimes putting the money up front. So like investing in fans and cleaning supplies and disposable masks may be more cost effective than if you have to respond to an outbreak. Think about a prevention plan as an investment in community safety, in your reputation, in the idea that you're preparing for the worst, or preventing the worst from happening, preventing an outbreak by investing in the community up front. So the last little piece is not so little. It's when there has been an exposure. A lot of times I find that COVID dialogue is a lot about prevention, which is good, but what happens if there is been an exposure, especially if it's been at an event that is large scale? Risk will never be completely eliminated. So even while titling this webinar Safe Events, a part of me was like, there's no such thing as a safe event. There's safer events. So risk will always be a part of the conversation. And therefore, being prepared for an exposure will avoid you adding to the problem, and again, protects your reputation. I keep coming back to the reputation piece because, as we've seen, exposures do happen, and how businesses or event planners respond says something about their values. And if community is a core value and safer community is a core value, then having a pre-thought about response to an exposure is going to make sure that you're not scrambling. So before the pandemic, do we remember those times? Symptoms like a cough or a sore throat didn't raise an alarm, and so many people worked while feeling ill. So as leaders and as business owners or event planners, it's important that we encourage employees and volunteers to, one, get tested, but two, report their results. The language we use around how we talk about positive test results is important for creating a sense of honesty and trust within your organization. If somebody feels like they can't report when they're positive, or they can't take time off work, then we're adding to the problem again. So how do we encourage people to take that time, and how are we talking about COVID so that, again, it's not about penalizing, but properly being aware and addressing it, and being honest when it comes to our status. And just like I've mentioned, without thinking about what happens when there's an exposure, you're having to respond after the fact, and you run the risk of looking unprepared. This is nothing new. We had these conversations all the way back in March of 2020, but the dialogue has evolved to being, we have to go with the changes, meaning that if the mask mandate has been lifted, then we have to create different strategies so that we look like we understand the risks, and that we're not just minimizing risk for the sake of keeping the fun and the energy, because we can make this fun. We can have events. We can do things indoors while also looking like we know what we're talking about. So when there is an exposure, you have to ask yourself, is it important to make this a public moment? Do I need to close my store temporarily? Do I need to announce that the event is going to be on a different medium? Do I require volunteers or employees to test negative before they return to work? These are all questions that can have answers, but if you're thinking about them after the exposure's already happened, then you have sick employees that are asking questions and event attendees that are left in the ambiguity. So I really encourage you to make sure that COVID is a part of your planning process, making sure that you're not dismissing it just because numbers are low, but instead taking this time to get proactive about, if things do change, how are you going to handle it, and what do you want to demonstrate to the community. My last piece is similar to Khalees. We do still have resources available for businesses. Over at Venture Portland right now, we actually have a healthy business permit checklist. We could update that to reflect, again, the newer updates to the healthy business permits, but we can help you or a business kind of make sure you have all your deadlines and requirements all figured out. Prosper Portland has a ton of grant opportunities, but the one that's kind of within line with this webinar is that there is reopening and repair grants. Unfortunately, there is a wait list for these. A lot of businesses have needed help trying to get restarted and getting the repairs necessary to open up again, but this is something that is you can still apply to get on the wait list and perhaps get the ball rolling for next year or later on in the fall and winter season. Oregon Small Business Development Center has advisors that are available to work with your business to answer questions and provide resources. This is kind of a broad development center, but they do, during the pandemic, they created a bunch of tools for businesses so that they can get specific COVID-related questions answered. And they're just an amazing development center that is focused on small businesses. So really hope you check those ones out. Ooh, Khalees dropped another link in the chat that is a Vibrant Spaces Community Events Activation Fund, which I hadn't even heard about. So I might have you talk about that right after I finish my list. But the last one on this slide is the Business Retention Services Program, another sort of wordy program, but this is going to provide consulting services to assist Oregon companies facing difficult times. All of these resources I will provide hyperlinks so that they're easy to find in an email when we thank you all for coming to the webinar. But even if you were just to Google this, it would be right there for you if you don't want to wait for my email. For events specifically, it can be helpful to partner with organizations focusing on COVID-19 education, prevention, and relief. They can provide valuable insights to how to make your event safer. Two, that presents this communal approach to events that they could pop up at your street fair. They could hand out helpful flyers and information. So inviting these organizations could allow for you to not have to be the expert at your event, but instead you have a tangible organization that people can go to if they have concerns or if they just need more supplies. So I've listed Boost Oregon because they do an amazing vaccine education, both workshops and they do pop-up events. And they are all taught by medical professionals. So that's a really wonderful resource for parents and for families that might be hesitant or still uncertain about the vaccine trajectory. They're an amazing org to rope in. Care Oregon, some of us might have utilized Care Oregon during the pandemic. They were doing a ton to help provide medical care, but they also do event sponsorships and grants, which I had no idea about. So again, I'll link everything so that if you're not just scouring the Care Oregon website looking for this information, but they're another great state-based organization that has a ton of resources. And then the last one I found through my research, it's called Hands On Greater Portland. And this is a wonderful nonprofit organization that collects volunteers and volunteer projects and sort of tries to pair the right people to the right thing. So if you are looking for, volunteers that might provide extra sanitization during your indoor event, or maybe they're handing out masks. There are people that are probably within Portland that want to tackle these COVID related issues and are staying involved with organizations that are tackling COVID. So utilizing this volunteer database to help prevent COVID transmissions could be a way to keep this as a priority without adding it as an expense. So let's see, I have one final chat. Oh yes, Nana dropped another organization, Hands On. Oh no, it's the volunteer one that I just mentioned. Thank you, Nana. This brings me to the conclusion. I'm gonna leave Khalees's information up. In terms of the events hub at Venture Portland, a small plug for me and Mackenzie. If you are interested in trying to get sponsors or partners with these organizations, we at the Events Hub will help facilitate those conversations and approaches. So feel free to email us just saying, hey, we have a street fair and we'd love it if Care Oregon did a pop-up, but we have no idea where to begin. That's where we can come in to help. Other than that, I'm going to stop sharing and see all of you again. We have some time to chit chat quickly. If Khalees wanted to share the resource she posted in the chat, do you have anything to mention about that one, Khalees?
I don't know a whole lot about it. I haven't been involved. I was just looking at the website and it looks like there's $470,000 available and they're going to be giving out grants ranging from $2,500 to $10,000.
Whoa. And
definitely check it out. I think it's worth a look.
This is the Vibrant Spaces Community Events Action Fund. That's a lot of words, but also a lot of dollars. Great. So with our remaining 10 or so minutes, I would love to turn it into sort of a discussion. You as business owners and as event planners have obviously confronted the COVID issue again and again and again and again, but I'm curious, what are reoccurring things that you're hearing from the community? What are they frustrated with? Is there anything that needs to be addressed as the leaders within our communities? And if you have a temperature reading of your district and how it feels about COVID, that might be interesting as well. But I'd like to turn it over to anybody that wants to share perhaps about anything COVID related or strategies they've been using that have been very successful. Anyone interested? Oh, okay. Well,
I'll say something.
Great, Sarah, thank you.
There has been a group of people that, including like Care Oregon and Solve, they're all working together to do these wellness fairs on the east side. I'm not sure if that's happening with this particular group all over the city, but they provide vaccines, they provide vaccine testing, they provide all kinds of great stuff, and other things like haircuts and free food. And we're having one tomorrow in Gateway. And I went to last time they did one, I went and I met the organizers, and they had so much great information and so much energy, and they want to start doing them all over the city. So on Instagram, the best way to find them is through the organization PDX Saints Love, which I'll put in the chat. So if anybody wanted to get them involved in their district or have them help with an event, they seem like they totally have it going on.
Fantastic. I love hearing how the East Side has been really coming together to address wellness. And it's not just COVID, it's all the pieces. I've heard that it started in Lents, but is now expanding. So again, this is a great way to show up for your district in terms of prioritizing, not only community events, but community care. Anybody else seen an event that felt really safe, or maybe noticed some things that aren't so safe, without pointing fingers? I'm just curious if anybody's had any recent COVID experiences. Or maybe we've all just decided not to talk about it because that's the general feeling, which is also valid. And I've noticed that happening. People don't, the dialogue fatigue, right? On top of the Zoom fatigue and mask fatigue is like, I don't even want to listen to another COVID conversation. So anybody? Okay, well, I'll share just really fast. Venture Portland staff meeting just happened recently where we were all indoors at our office, and we as a collective decided to, prior to the event, make sure to email everybody just that masks, although optional, are encouraged. And again, it's not about punishing or making sure compliance was 100%, but it was a community reminder that kind of called me in to remind me that as much as I feel safe amongst my coworkers, that this is something that isn't something that I can do to make people feel safe without having them come forward to disclose why they want a mask on. So again, I think even though it is tiring, this is the most accessible way to make sure that you're not alienating any people with disabilities or anybody who's just feeling like they, you know, have a risk at home. Okay, well, if that is all that we have, I really do appreciate you all coming out to continue this conversation, because it is exhausting to have to keep addressing it, but it's not going away. So I am grateful for Khalees to come in and bring in all of these resources to host events and business outside. Bring that statistic to your district and remind them that 18 times higher. So just bring it outdoors if at all possible. And Khalees, I'm sure you'll get some emails from us with the questions, but I really appreciate you all for joining me today. Thank you so much. I hope you have a gorgeous rest of your week. Thank you all. I'm going to end the recording.
Thanks for having me. I
Of
appreciate
course. Appreciate
everyone.
you. Bye. Bye-bye.